Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Gosztola, and I'm joined by Chip Gibbons, and we're pleased to be here to share a couple of our favorite movies. We're coming together to do something to talk about how we enjoy movies. So good to see you, Chip.
It's good to see you as always, Kevin. I feel like I constantly see you on my computer.
Yeah, and we're gonna do this as a monthly thing, something that we can do for people to enjoy, for us to enjoy, but also for people who like films like us. They could tune in, and each month we're gonna bring a film and discuss. I'll bring one. Chip will bring one. That's essentially the format, and then that's it. There's nothing more to it. It's pretty simple and straightforward. There's no agenda, and the way this came together is I saw that Chip was posting on Letterboxd, and I was following his favorites and some of the
I
things
made you join Letterbox.
he
I want the viewers to know that you were on Letterbox because I
I was
harassed you joining.
I was recruited for Letterboxd. It is like a cult that Chip started on Letterboxd. No,
I joined.
not not
I
not
joined the cult, but
not quite. No, but people. I imagine people on there who do write reviews take it and can take it very seriously. What they're doing. I just found it to be a natural home. I've tried for the last decade to write periodically reviews that I'll publish on my own sites, and putting some of the reviews that I've been doing there over the last months has been really nice because it's just like, I mean, it's really where that stuff belongs, and like people are gonna come there because they enjoy movies. It's not a great fit. It's not as good of a fit at Shadowproof. It's not as good of a fit because it's not like people aren't primed to come there and enjoy films.
yeah, and just a little bit of additional background point. I mean, Kevin and I obviously write about some of the same issues that are very dark and depressing, and every time we do one of these online events about whistleblowers being tortured or war crimes, or it's like, oh, let's do a fun, uplifting pop culture podcast or broadcast. And it's like, what kind of pop culture that would be fun and uplifting? And it turns out like we both like depressing goth music like The Cure and film noir. So all of our various attempts at coming up with uplifting side projects that don't involve torture, war crimes, persecution, people for time, just like, oh, let's discuss The Cure, or oh, how about an Orson Welles films about a corrupt cop who frames people? And it's like, I don't actually think this is more uplifting. It's actually just differently depressing. So if you're an armchair psychoanalyst, take from that tidbit what you will.
I mean, it's possible to derive pleasure from it, though. So that's why you keep returning to it
The
and and
Pasolini attitude.
and watching it. So we'll start with your film. I'll say up at the top here that we are going to each do a film, and I already said that, but I'll repeat it. And I'm going to be talking about Ocean's 11, but first we'll talk about uh, your film, Touch of Evil.
Yeah, so I just want to specify that I have no formal training in film. I didn't go to film school. I watch a lot of films and I enjoy them. I had to Google how to pronounce Cheracalco lighting before this. I listened to this man who has this YouTube series about like how to say fun Italian and English art words. I'm pretty sure I've forgotten how to pronounce it. So if you're like super technical and you're like that's a crane this or that shot, I am going to radically disappoint you and just ruin your night. I feel like the person who was like discovering vinyl albums for the first time and opened like the gatefold up and like described gatefold without using the word gatefold, and everyone made fun of them on the internet. So that's what I'm subjecting myself to this evening. I have no technical expertise in filmmaking. Um, Films look cool though, and sometimes the stories are interesting. So that's what I'm bringing you.
Come
And
on, people are gonna watch because you're not that kind
no,
of a
they're gonna
yeah.
watch because they are that, and they want to like get in my YouTube comments and be like, "You stupid idiot." But that being said, so I picked like any person who knows nothing about film, Orson Welles' film, Touch of Evil. Obviously, there are really two levels you can judge a film on. One is a technical level, and I really do think this film is quite stunning. Even if I cannot use all of the fancy Italian words to describe the lighting, it has a lot of the hallmarks of both Orson Welles and film noir in it. That really heavy sort of expressionist style where there's this beautiful black and white cinematography and high contrast. This excellent use of lighting and shadows, um, that I just really don't even understand how someone like Orson Welles is able to accomplish. There's several scenes that really stuck out to me because they all take place on this same street, and there's neon lights on the street, and one of the neon lights is pulsating, and they're not in front of the light per se. They're usually in a building elsewhere, and you can sort of see the light pulsating in from the street. And there's one particular scene where they're in a hotel, and they turn the light off in the hotel, and the only light in this, I'm sure they have fancy camera lights and studio lights, but the only light visible in this scene is from this outside pulsating light through the curtain coming in the room. And it's this really interesting physical confrontation between Orson Welles and this other character, and just the way the pulsating neon light shining into the room while they struggle. It really creates a very interesting scene. And one of the other things about this film is it's not always sort of like super focused on the characters or the main action. There's things happening in the background. So there's this one scene where and I will warn people that Charlton Heston plays a Mexican national. Uh,
Wait, no, hold on. So if you're gonna say that he plays someone who in his later life he probably would have been opposed to
Oh,
vehemently.
absolutely. Mr. Vargas, he's a Mexican narcotics officer, cabinet official. Orson Welles plays this really racist detective, Hank Quinnan, who, despises Mexicans and hates this character. And in several scenes, he says stuff like, he doesn't talk like a Mexican, or he doesn't look like a Mexican. And it's really,
Speak English.
I literally love this film, but when, Orson Welles' character Hank is like, he doesn't talk like a Mexican. It's like, that's because it's Charlton Heston pretending to be Mexican. I cannot tell if that's meant to acknowledge the racism of the Hank Quinlan character, or just, which I'm probably mispronouncing, or just the reality of Charlton Heston as Mr. Vargas. And interesting thing about Orson Welles is I don't want to make this go too far off in his politics, but he has this very interesting sort of, I don't know if you want to call it social democratic or left liberal New Deal politics that's very skeptical of policing, very pro-democratic, very anti-fascist. There's a lot of reference in his films to both how his characters sort of either hate police, or in this film, it's a good cop versus a corrupt cop, but many references to the Spanish Civil War. He narrated this Spanish Earth, which is written by Ernest Hemingway, Ethiopia. But in many of his films, he plays a very character unlike himself. So, like in The Stranger, he's an escaped Nazi war criminal who has no German accent, about as believable as Charlton Heston as a Mexican narcotics officer. And this one, he's a very corrupt, racist cop. So it's interesting. And I know this film is probably hashtag problematic because of the fact that Heston is playing a non-white character. But it is interesting to me that this sort of Mexican character, who is frequently described as foreign, who is frequently described as an outside observer, is very much the hero of the film, and he is the sort of good cop who believes in democracy and the rule of law. And there's all these scenes like, what's a foreigner doing in the Hall of Records? And it's like, Hall of Records is open to all men. And one of the speeches he gives, it's not, you know abolitionist, but it is very much sort of this left perspective on due process rights, is in fact based off of commentaries that Orson Welles had given for the BBC and previously had given for his radio show about a black veteran, Isaac Woodward, who had been blinded in a police brutality incident. And Orson Welles took it upon himself to speak out for this person and to advocate for justice for him. And one of the things he said in his BBC commentaries is, "I'm willing to admit that the policeman has a difficult job, a very hard job, but it's the essence of our society that a policeman's job should be hard. He's there to protect the free citizen, not to chase the criminals. Chasing criminals is an incidental part of the job." And that dialogue, not verbatim, but it is taken in part and given to Charlton Heston's character in this sort of confrontation with Orson Welles, where Orson Welles enters the room and he says, he has special ideas about police procedures. He doesn't seem to mind if a killer is hanged or not, just so long as we follow the rule books. And he responds, "I don't think the policeman is supposed to act like a dog catcher, putting criminals behind bars. In any free country, the law protects the guilty as well as the innocent. Our job is hard enough as it is. It's supposed to be hard. A policeman's job is only easy in a police state." And obviously it's a very liberal attitude, but it does sort of express this sort of disgust or animosity to corrupt policing. I mean, they talk about honest cops versus dishonest cops, and what Vargas, played by Heston, says is, some of them take bribes, most are honest, but even the honest policemen abuse their powers in other ways. So there is this really sort of very astute defense of due process, of civil liberties, of sort of basic rights. And in Orson Welles' BBC commentary says, there's also laws to protect us from the police, and they exist for a reason. And, Orson Welles' character in this movie, Hank Quinnan, isn't like a cartoon character. They talk about his wife being killed and him being unable to solve the murder. And he's an ex-alcoholic. And I think I'm allowed to give spoilers for a movie from the 1950s.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah, if it's like what, 70 years old at this point almost, yeah.
But he relapses into alcoholism, and the other police, "Oh, you did this to this honest cop. You're trying to break him. You're trying to ruin his name. You've driven him to drink after 12 years on the wagon." And Vargas just comes back. "Think about the men he put in the death house. Those are the men who deserve your tears." So these people on death row. And there's this whole thing about framing guilty people, like Orson Welles is, in fact, in many of these cases, framing people who are guilty. But our sympathy doesn't rely on the police officer who abuses the law, who abuses human rights. It's with those on death row. It's with those who's falsely convicted. The fact that this is coming from a liberal narcotics officer who is also feuding with this gang, I think from a modern abolitionist perspective, we might have some grievances with that, but it is really sort of, I think very, I think it's a fantastic film, and I think there's a real stark contrast to the filmography of Orson Welles or these other sort of classical noir films. Some people have said this is not an expression of Orson Welles' sort of 1930s optimism. It's sort of his embrace of his own cynicism. It's his failure. I'm eating popcorn. I will confess to do that. It seemed like a fun thing to do during a movie.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm eating popcorn on YouTube though, so.
I don't think you can get censored on YouTube for eating popcorn.
Comments my weight. So, Orson Welles is quite portly in this movie, and there's multiple references within the film explaining his weight. Orson Welles famously, like myself, struggled with his weight, used amphetamines, where of course.
Although I understand he wasn't actually that big at the time that he did that, because he did later in life get much larger in his weight. And again, I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying. But when he was in that film, he actually padded himself to make him look bigger. Yeah.
So there's multiple references explaining why he's so overweight. It's like, I'm an ex-alcoholic. I have to eat candy bars now to stop myself from drinking hooch. Um, but I completely blanked on where I was.
Well, let me just say that of films that don't age well, I'd say that Orson did something good with the character that Charlton Heston plays because he doesn't speak in an accent.
Yeah.
It's so there's no like stereotyping of what we think Mexicans would be. So it's quite interesting because it doesn't, it doesn't fall into some of the traps that
And,
earlier films could.
and maybe this sort of plays into the magic minority, but I don't think so. He's the main character, and he intervenes in American society and is like, is the good guy, the defender of democracy. It's the American police who are presented as corrupt, who are presented as depraved, who are in bed with drug runners and killers and stuff. And the American police are not sending their best, and this so-called outsider is the one who is standing up for the values that I think Orson Welles thought our country should stand for. What I was going to say is I think to me a really jarring difference between sort of the noir films and the so-called neo-noir films is they're both sort of accused of cynicism. I actually have heard people say this is an expression of Orson Welles' loss of his 30s. I think it's a very optimistic film because of the great speechifying Charlton Heston does, although without being didactic, and the fact that he does prevail in the end. Spoiler alert. But the sort of cynicism and evil in the 1940s, 1950s noir films. I mean, the police are never the good guys, right? They're usually very bad, or they're ambiguous, or whatever. And you watch these sort of so-called neo-noir films, many of which I like quite a bit, like Seven, and it's the police officer who's disillusioned by all the corruption and evil within the society around them. Oftentimes, the police officers being degraded. And society is wicked, and why are they trying to help us and save us when there's sex and vice and drugs and all these things? Whereas in the noir films, it's the sort of exact opposite. And I know I'm being pedantic and didactic, but I do think a significant point of departure in cinema and popular culture has been this sort of relentless sort of propaganda. And I think even sort of we see this in sort of the distinction between the neo-noir films like Seven and the noir films like Touch of Evil or Lady from Shanghai or Maltese Falcon, where it's not this great police officer who is surrounded by a corrupt society and disillusioned and should get out because they're in the city and the city is ridden with vice and disease and they're too good for it. The police are definitely part of the problem, or in some cases the problem, even when they are very sort of individualistic films depicting one man against society. There's still a more leftist sort of class based attitude towards a lot of them. And
Yeah.
I think we show the opening scene. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'm spinning around.
Yeah. Let's give your connection just a chance to catch up here. But I think you've made some really good comments, and so let's go into this opening shot.
Over the shot. Am I allowed to talk over the shot, or am I?
Yeah, you can talk over the shot. Yeah, let's pull this up here. I'm gonna share the screen.
I'm also drinking wine, eating popcorn. I've been.
What you do at a movie?
I've been doing these videos all throughout the pandemic. I've watched how much weight I've gained over 2 years. And people on Twitter have let me know about this. So
I believe I've got this queued up. Okay, so
this is, I believe it's a 3-minute scene. It's a single shot. It opens with sort of the timer on the bomb. Okay. And then this is still a single shot, but like we were focused on the bomb, but now we're focused more on the city. I sound like an asshole talking over this. I apologize. And he goes and puts it in the car trunk. We saw the couple who's coming to the car before. We didn't zoom in on them. They walk down this alley. Now we see them. They're entering the car. And I feel like in a lot of films you would follow the car. I know that's not like Donald Trump, like saying the obvious. But we don't actually follow the car. We see it go back through the alley, and we're sort of zooming out over the city. And the car is now it's still in our main frame of focus, but there's other cars, there's police, it's sort of a background. It's gradually becoming part of the background, and in a moment, as we sort of zoom out into the city at large, we're going to focus in on Charlton Heston and Janet Leigh. They're going to appear any minute now. I feel like I'm, Donald Trump talking about steam-powered ships versus digital.
No, it's quite well done because they walk right into the shot.
Yeah, they walk right into the shot, and now we're going to... This is a single shot. There's no cuts between them. Here they come, and the car is passing. Is that their car?
I know Orson struggled with this like numerous times. There's like many takes that had to be done.
I cannot imagine how they ever got this based on like 1950s technology, CGI, none of that fancy stuff. And now we're walking past the car again. We're gonna go to the Border Patrol. We're gonna discover some important background. They're married. It's their wedding night, the honeymoon. They're gonna get a chocolate soda. They used to make the ships with steam. Now they make them with digital.
And the score, by the way, is Henry Mancini, who was a popular composer of the time.
I don't often agree with Donald Trump, Kevin, but do you know one thing he did say that I agree with a lot? Orson Welles, he's fucked up but a genius.
That's a Donald Trump quote?
You folks
Yeah.
are American citizens?
I am, yes.
Where were you born, miss?
Getting a chocolate soda?
What?
Philadelphia.
His name is Vargas. Hey, Jim. See who's here? Sure, Mr. Vargas. Out on the trail of another dope
Typical
ring?
border stopping, they establish all of the main elements of the plot, explain who the characters are.
Again, we haven't. By the way, we haven't cut yet. Just so
I know.
people know, like, yeah, that's what's so amazing. It's
You're working on the Grandy case as the border. Oh, there's other Grandy brothers still at large. Border Patrol really driving the plot along.
You're American citizen, miss?
No, I got this ticking noise.
Yeah, okay.
No, really, this
Good
ticking
night.
noise in my head.
Mike, do you realize this is the very first time we've been together in my country?
You realize I haven't kissed you in over an hour?
Now I think we've cut.
this angle is like unlike anything of the time. By the way,
There's very interesting angles. The scene where Orson Welles' character first enters Tanya's place also has some very interesting angles. I tried to read about angles in film before doing this so I could learn the film bro angle words. But all I can say is this film has cool angles. It's still amazing visually. I said at the beginning there's really two ways to sort of judge a film. One, by its technical way, and there's films that are quite technically brilliant and are very boring, and there's films that are quite engaging and just technically not well. This film has a very engaging plot. There's some hokey language about marijuana that sounds a bit like Reefer Madness, but do you know what Mary Jane is? It will make you feel real good. Do you remember that line, Kevin?
yeah, well, you know what's more dated than that is I picked up on the fact that rock music is actually the sound of evil in this movie. It and
Slayer?
like
It sounds
like when they're at the hotel with the Grandy boys and they play the boogie, they play like boogie woogie over the intercom. That is like the signal. I'm not even kidding when I say this. Sounds like I'm being hyperbole. It's like the signal that a group of marauders are coming to rape you. Are coming to rape you.
They're mainliners. They're
Yeah.
doing that Mary Jane and heroin, two
Yeah.
drugs of similar addictiveness, but can
It's,
also be faked. The results of smoking marijuana and shooting heroin can also be faked by shooting someone with sodium pentothal, a very common medical. Yeah, I mean, some of the medical facts are not great in this film. The character of the nightman at the motel, I cannot tell if he's supposed to be comical or just is not his body he has the same sort of spastic body motions I have and has the same glasses I have. I really have a lot in common with him, but he goes, "It stinks in there. I'm not cleaning this." I don't know.
That voice, it kind of it takes you out of the movie.
Fucking, and that scene where he runs outside, he's like hiding behind a tree and like peeking behind the branches. The Granny Boys did this. Anyways, I should shut the fuck up now.
All right.
This program off. Kevin is going to be much more delightful than I am.
All right. I'll go ahead now and I'll talk about why I selected Ocean's 11 for the second film of our nice little show. Which, say, halfway through, I'm enjoying this. I would like to tell you that I don't find myself regretting getting together with you to talk cinema. I don't know if anybody else is like, why am I still watching this? Now they're closing the YouTube window and leaving.
You have an Excel by now, it's on you.
But so I selected Ocean's 11, and this is the version from 2001 that Steven Soderbergh directed. And I've never seen the original. I'll just come out and be very open about that right now. The one that has the Rat Pack in it. I actually don't really have much interest in seeing it, but I also know that this film that was put together by Steven Soderbergh, it succeeds because it basically leaves behind the original, and so you don't feel like you're watching a carbon copied remake of a classic movie. It doesn't feel like a ripoff of that film. And what I enjoy so much about this movie is just simply the fact that Steven Soderbergh's goal was to give the audience pleasure from the first frame to the final frame of the movie, and to just basically deliver. And it's basically classic Hollywood from the first scene to the last scene. The setups, the sort of, even the setting, like just being in casinos in Vegas is basically is very, like, even though maybe we weren't always in that setting in classic films, there's something about it that just, it has this like glitz and glamour to it that calls back to classic Hollywood. And we have classic film stars who are featured in the ensemble. He brings in Elliot Gould in as this guy who can, I think, bankroll the heist operation that is going to be undertaken against these casinos. And Elliot Gould was in his own gambling film, casino film called California Split in the 1970s with George Segal, who just died last year. And so we have this classic movie star. We have the classic movie star of Carl Reiner playing in this film, who has an amazing role. There's this guy, Saul, who has these ulcers. I love watching him pop the Tums during this film. And everything he does is perfect. And then, you know, this ensemble that is assembled, the people who he gets together are stars who were at the top of their game at the time that this movie was put together. In 2001, you have George Clooney, who's coming off Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, who'd just done Three Kings, who'd done The Thin Red Line, who was in Out of Sight with Steven Soderbergh directing. And then you have Brad Pitt, who was in Fight Club and Snatch. Just 2 or 3 years before that. These are huge films that people still talk about today. Matt Damon had been in Rounders, Saving Private Ryan, Good Will Hunting. He had worked on Good Will Hunting before this. And then Julia Roberts, who plays Tess in this film and is makes an incredible contribution to this, was in Aaron Brockovich, also a Steven Soderbergh film, and Notting Hill. And I'll throw out Stepmom because a favorite person of ours in our world who drives people batty, Susan Sarandon, is in Stepmom. So work her in there so we can troll people who like to blame her for the state of our politics and
I
everything.
don't understand her decisions as a Supreme Court justice. I'm very disappointed.
And at the time, Steven Soderbergh had just made Traffic, which was quite a popular, all the rage, looked into really like the collateral damage of the war on drugs, essentially. There's a unique style of filmmaking to it, and with this film, he kind of abandons a lot of the more cutting edge stuff that he had been working on as a director, and he said he's going to make something more straightforward. I have this quote too. Before me, I love this. I think this also speaks to why I enjoy this film so much. He's inspired by classic adventure films like Jaws of the 70s, and he said, "I've been very public about the fact that Jaws is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's a classic piece of entertainment. I love seeing a movie that does what it does and does it well and makes no argument about it. To me, Ocean's 11 was an opportunity to try and make a movie that has no desire except to give you pleasure from beginning to end, a movie that you just surrender to without embarrassment and without regret." And that's exactly how I feel about Ocean's 11 every time I pop it in. And I think like I enjoy going on this heist with this crew of people who are assembled, and they all have different ways of contributing to this, and everyone fits in and plays their role. I think it may be one of the best ensemble movies of the last 20 to 30 years. And Bernie Mac is in this film as Frank, and he's beloved television star, comic, and so everyone in this. I think also, like, when you look at this cast, these are people who 20 years from now have continued to appear in films. Most of them have continued to appear in films and went on to do more excellent work. And so, the scene with Ruben, who's played by Elliot Gould, where he talks about how, I can't really do it justice, but he talks about how it used to be civilized. You'd hit a guy, he'd whack you done, but with Terry Benedict, it's a lot different. And he's warning them. This scene is, it's like basically is really where the movie gets rolling for me. That's it's just fantastic. And then after that, we just get rolling into all the different elements that are going to be put together. And I think what's really incredible about what Ted Griffin, the screenwriter, does, and then also what Steven Soderbergh is doing, is if you watch some of the sequences, there'll be like 3 different threads that are going on at the same time if you really pick up on it. And it's quite an incredible feat of juggling. So, like, for example, if you watch one of the sequences that starts with Carl Reiner, who takes on this persona of this Lyman Zerga, who is going into the casino to ask Terry Benedict to basically give his jewels a safe place in his vault. He walks in, and then as he's moving into the casino, we simultaneously move to Matt Damon's character, who is Linus, who is talking about how he's collecting intelligence on Terry Benedict, who's the casino mogul or owner here, and how he's figuring out his movements so that they can orchestrate this heist. And then once again, like, there's another sequence where not only do we have 2 things going, but we actually have 3 things going on at the same time. This is more towards the last 40 minutes of the film. We see that Carl Reiner's character has gone into the vault, or is now watching the briefcase go into the vault. And then you have Linus, who is impersonating this Nevada Gaming Commission employee, with Ramon, who is Frank's basically this is alter ego. He has been brought to Tony's attention, so now because of his background, they're trying to toss Ramon out, who was working at the casino. And then we see Danny Ocean, the main character played by George Clooney, who's being tailed. And so you have all of these things, like, again, in the same way that Orson Welles has all of these things happening in this long take, you have in this sequence, you have all of these actors and all of the different players moving from position to position pretty seamlessly. And I think just the way that the segues move from uh, scene to scene, and also the score, that is done by David Holmes, uh, that adds to that feel of a glitzy, gaudy casino. That adds to people who are in the process of putting together an operation that is going to uh, bring down these three different casinos. It's just, again, it's pure pleasure to watch this unfold. I don't have anything, there's nothing there's nothing about this movie that has a message. I don't have anything to say that's really profound about this film, other than I think it's some of the classiest entertainment that has been put together on film in the past 20 years. And I mean, I think it was 20 years old as of last year, and it still plays pretty well. You could say that the technology appears dated, but I think that like the filmmakers actually made the vault and some other aspects of the casino, like the fact that there's surveillance. They make a big deal about how in Terry's casinos, somebody's always watching, and so that I think that remains true for the casinos today. So, in actuality, I don't think the way that they've set it up makes it too unbelievable, because I do believe that there's certain things that are still true today about how. So as a viewer who doesn't really know that much about how casino security works, I buy into it. Is basically all that matters. I think that like you buy into it because there's enough there that you accept that that's really how it all would be. And so that's another important thing, is like the heist isn't very convoluted in my opinion. Like there's a lot going on, there's a lot of different pieces, and they also try to like do misdirections so that like you don't really like what you think happened. They tell you later like it really didn't exactly happen that way. These characters were actually playing different parts. But with that said, I mean, none of that is terribly unbelievable. It all works. It all works for me pretty well.
But no, I actually saw this film in theaters when it came out, and
Yeah, me too.
I'm pretty sure I saw Oceans 12 and 13 as well.
I won't be recommending those, but
No. And I'm pretty sure I watched the Oprah special on this one, and I remember how impressed she was with Bernie Mac's performance. When you said you had not seen the Frank Sinatra version, I made a dramatic face. I just want the viewers to know I have also not seen the Frank Sinatra version. I was just trolling Kevin. But no, it is an interesting film because, I mean, my memories of it are like it's a film I saw with my parents when it came out, and my mom watched it a lot on VHS tape, and of course she got Oceans 12 and 13 on VHS tape. And, I got a little bit older, and then I got sort of, more compulsively pretentious, as one does when they become a teenager. And I really haven't seen it for, like, I don't think 20-some years. And I was like, why did Kevin pick this film? And I started watching it right before we did this. And it's very stylish. It's an extremely stylish film. It's depictions of them sitting in the casinos, their suits, the suit buttoned. They can button their suits, but no tie, and the top shirt button unbuttoned in these casinos. It's very, very stylish. And there was one scene I was particularly struck by. It was the financier character was describing sort of the past most successful casino heist.
Oh yeah,
Were not even remotely successful, and they're decade by decade, and like each of those brief snippets are shot in a style that is typical of that decade. right? Like the filming, the music, like you feel like you're watching an 80s movie, and the one that's from the 80s, you feel like you're watching a 50s, 40s, I don't know, movie from whatever time. The 70s one, not so much, but I was actually really impressed with that level of detail and care that went into just sort of making that scene. Of course, Brad Pitt's hair product is very early 2000s, so I appreciated that. And I forgot George Clooney was ever that young.
Yeah. And I'll say that like the dialogue is very like classic Hollywood. I think if you watch the scenes between George Clooney and Julia Roberts, I get this vibe of like a Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall. Like you get this like sense of like Cary Grant talking with Katharine Hepburn. You know, they're playing again the way that these characters are cast. They play like very classic sort of characters that you feel like you've seen these characters in movies before. Is sort of like what I'm saying here. And let's see, what else did I want to?
I'm in complete agreement. When I was watching the film, I felt like I did not feel like I was watching a film from 2001, which 2001, the late 90s, early 2000s, or whole 90s to 2010 are not a great time for popular culture. But when I was watching this film, I definitely felt like I was watching a classic Hollywood film. I mean, obviously it was not because Brad Pitt was there. The technology was what it was, but these very sorts of stylish casino scenes, the fact that it's a heist movie, and as I was watching, heist movies are kind of like the second most enduring type of film after like police procedurals, it feels like, and it's kind of curious why like the two most types of popular films are either about cops or robbers, to be quite basic. And it did feel, it was very interesting to watch. It did not feel dated at all.
Yeah, so I'll also work in. I have something that speaks specifically to Chip and his film interests, but that I dug up just because I feel like you would like to know this. But the first, let me just get out of the way. That what's really great about this picture is that all of these actors took pay cuts in order to appear in the same film and meet the budget. So, like, they didn't know this film was going to work. And they still got paid handsomely. But
and they got paid handsomely for Oceans 12, 13, 14, 17.
Yeah. Well, they didn't know there were going to be sequels. They didn't know this was going to work. But that's also, I think that's kind of like, the reason why the original Ocean's 11 doesn't work so much is it really is just a straight vehicle for the Rat Pack, and the film is very much second to the fact that, hey, we've got all four of these classic, this is what your grandparents were listening to. You got Frank Sinatra, you got Dean Martin, you have Sammy Davis Jr. We've got all these people together, and you're gonna enjoy seeing them on screen. And then like the story comes afterwards. Like it's it really doesn't matter what they're doing. It's just the excuses there. We've got these people together. So the trivia that I have for you that I want to make sure you get to hear, Chip, is that Luke Wilson and Owen Wilson were actually going to be these brothers that are played by Casey Affleck and Scott Caan. They're the Mormons who are constantly bickering, and I think actually rather hilarious. But they dropped out to film the Royal Tenenbaums, and then also Danny Glover was considered for the role of and Danny Glover was considered for the role of Frank that Bernie Mac played, but he also had Royal Tenenbaums, so he didn't play a character.
Everyone who's not me or a close personal friend of mine is wondering why you're telling me this. Royal Tenenbaums is one of my all-time favorite films. I always say like Vertigo or Touch of Evil or Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie is my favorite film, and they are up there. But like my actual personal favorite film, the film I've watched the most besides Beetlejuice, is Royal Tenenbaums. And
there was also a thought of working in Bill Murray as a lounge singer into Ocean's 11 for a scene. But you probably know what I'm going to tell you. He was doing Royal Tenenbaums. So some of these people, that's fine that they're not there. I mean, I don't have any.
I am envisioning Wes Anderson's Ocean's 11 right now.
You want to see him? Well, maybe see, we're 20 plus years away from it. That's enough time now. Hollywood's unspoken rule is that you can't leave it be. You have to come back and mess with it. So it might be time for like the reboot or a total re-envisioning of it, because that's about the amount of time, like the minimum amount of time that is allowed to go by before they ruin it and maybe like ruin the magic of it by trying to recreate it all over again. I suppose they've already ruined it by doing the
Ocean's Omicron.
The Ocean's 8.
Yeah.
Which just to get my stated position on this, I have no problem with recasting the film. So I have no problem with the statement that women can pull off heists too, which is really what Ocean's 8 is all about. It's about having an ensemble of women, where this is a male-dominated Ocean's 11. I have no problem with that, but I would just suggest that people do their own like story, independent of like making a carbon copy remake of these films, because I would think to me, it just seems like it'd be more powerful to see women doing something that was an original. Like, I don't know. Like, do I just want to see people plugged in to make the movie more representational? I mean, it really depends on how it's executed, but Ocean's 8 came out with very mediocre reception. Because
saying, Kevin, is you're not going to like my all women's version of John Carpenter's The Thing.
That could be fun.
So finish your thought, and then I'll explain why that's a joke for people who jokes are funny when we explain them.
To ruin the joke. No, I don't have any additional thought. I was going to play the clip and then wrap up our show. So I've got this queued up. We're going to show the scene where Carl Reiner's character is in this very fancy pad, very plush pad that they're all gathered in, and Danny Ocean is presenting these people who he's assembled for the heist with the plans for taking down these 3 casinos. And then, after hearing the plan, Carl Reiner wants to know if he heard it all correctly.
Say we get into the cage and through the security doors there and down the elevator we can't move and past the guards with the guns and into the vault we can't open.
Without being seen by the camera. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention.
Yeah, well, say we do all that. We're just supposed to walk out of there with $150 million in cash on us without getting stopped?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
And I don't know if it's possible, but there's probably not a lot of these clips where you see people popping Tums for comedic effect, but certainly I enjoy Carl Reiner's comedic touch with the Tums.
And he's been out of the robbery business for a while. And say, why he has religious? No, he has ulcers, right? That's the setup to this in the original part. No, or I think
Yeah.
I don't. I laughed out loud when they said he's been out of the business. He has a religion. No, he has ulcers. I don't know if that produced. I could see myself leaving the robbery business due to developing ulcers. More so than developing religion.
All right, so we are going to wrap, and we'll be back next month. I don't know what movies we'll be choosing, but it could be something we watched in the last month. It could be something we reach back in time and and want to share and talk about from 10 or 15 years ago. The only criteria for the picks we have is that we just don't really have an agenda with any of the movies. And I think this is a way of exploring and digging through the relationships that we have with movies, and sort of showing that, like, we can take time and just talk about things that give us joy, and at the same time continue to do the work that we do regularly that is making a meaningful contribution to, you know, whatever causes we're working on. My connection seems to be going in and out. So that is the signal. That is the signal that I need to wrap this thing up. So Chip, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Because if anyone watches this and emails me, I am aware that John Carpenter's The Thing is a remake of another movie. It is a deliberate all-male remake of a movie that did not have all-male characters. Just jokes are funny when we explain them, is what I used to say when I was in college.
Well, I didn't know that, so the joke went right over my head. So.
Oh, that was the joke. John Carpenter deliberately did not cast any women in The Thing, which is based off of a short story that another film was based off of. And so my all-women remake of The Thing joke was probably a joke for one.
Maybe somebody who made it this far.
That person would have emailed being like, "The Thing is based off of the short story, The Thing That Came in the Cold, and The Thing from Outer Space features, women in it, and John Carpenter chose only to cast men, and that's why many people believe it's a metaphor for the..." Anyways, I'm not even going I think it's a metaphor with, because there's all men in it, but, anyways.
Yes, people have problems if you touch their sacred objects and speak ill of them if they are really, really into those sacred objects. But with that, we'll just set off. So thank you all for joining us while we ate popcorn and gabbed away about two of these films. And we'll be with you next month. Until then, we'll see you around.